Journey through time, exploring the world of Vikings. Hey there, future historians. Ever wondered about fierce warriors sailing the seas, discovering new lands, and leaving their mark on history? Get ready to set sail on an adventure to the fascinating world of the Vikings. Today, class, we're diving into the exciting history of the Vikings. Our goal is to understand who these Norsemen were, where they came from, and how they lived. We'll explore their homes, their beliefs, their voyages, and their impact on the world. Get ready to learn some awesome facts. Around 1,200 years ago, many tribes called Scandinavia home. Think of Scandinavia as a puzzle made up of countries like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and even parts of Finland, Iceland, and Greenland. The people who lived there were known as Norsemen, meaning Northmen, but we often call them Vikings. Imagine living in a place where winters are super cold. The Vikings were tough because they had to survive freezing temperatures. They hunted animals for food and used their fur to stay warm. They were true survival experts. Vikings built long, narrow houses out of wood. They covered them with earth and grass to keep the wind out, creating cozy homes with thatched roofs. These longhouses could be huge, sometimes up to 250 feet long. Imagine living with your whole family, not just your parents and siblings, but also your cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. That's how Viking families lived all together in one big longhouse. It must have been quite the party. At night, families gathered around a big fireplace called a hearth. They told stories about their gods, like Odin, the leader of Asgard, and his wife Frigg. These stories were like their favorite TV shows, passed down through generations. They also told stories about Odin's children, Balder, Loki, and Thor. Loki was a trickster, always playing pranks. Thor, the god of thunder, fought giants with his mighty hammer, Mjolnir. Every time he battled, lightning and thunder filled the sky. Freya was the goddess of love, beauty, and war. To pass the long, dark winters, Vikings sang songs, danced, and played board games. Can you imagine playing a board game by the light of a fire, listening to exciting stories of gods and monsters? During the warmer months, Vikings were farmers. They grew crops and took care of sheep and other animals, but they were also amazing sailors and navigators. They were like the GPS of their time. They learned to follow the sun and stars, and even the color of the ocean and the movement of sea life to figure out where they were. Their longships were made of strong wood and could sail in deep oceans or shallow rivers. They were the perfect vehicles for exploration. Vikings used their ships to discover new lands and trade goods. They sailed far and wide, exchanging furs, timber, and ivory with other tribes. They were like the international merchants of their time. However, some Vikings chose a different path. Instead of trading, they raided villages, stealing food and valuables. They were skilled warriors, using large round shields, spears, and axes in battle. They even created a shield wall by interlocking their shields for extra protection. Because of their skills in battle, the Vikings were able to conquer land far into Europe. They became feared far and wide. While not all Vikings were aggressive, stories about their raids spread, shaping the image of Vikings as fierce warriors. Many Vikings chose to trade with other tribes and settle in new lands, especially if the climate and soil were good for farming. They settled places like Iceland and Greenland, establishing new communities. During the Viking Age, many tribes moved all the way into England and modern-day Russia. They were explorers and settlers, shaping the map of Europe and beyond. One of the Norsemen who settled Greenland was named Eric the Red. He got his name from his red hair, red beard, and fiery temper. Eric's wife was named Jodahelid, and they had 3 sons, Thorvald, Leif, and Thorstein, and a sister named Freydis. Greenland was extremely cold and not ideal for farming, but Eric the Red and his family were able to hunt animals like reindeer and do some basic farming to survive. The hard work made them strong and resilient. Eventually, Erik and his people found a better place to live in Greenland, where Erik's son Leif grew up. His full name was Leif Erikson, meaning Leif, Erik's son. Leif was raised by a family friend named Tyrkir, who taught him important Viking skills. Tyrkir taught Leif how to hunt with a bow, trap animals, and fish. He also taught him how to sail a boat and navigate at sea. These skills were essential for survival and exploration. Over time, Leif mastered these skills and decided to make a life for himself. He sailed to the islands off the coast of Scotland, where he met a woman named Thorgunna. They married and had a son named Thorgils. Like his father, Leif wanted to explore the world and discover new lands. He had heard stories about a land west across the ocean from Greenland and Europe. He gathered a crew of 34 Vikings and set off across the Atlantic Ocean. After many days of sailing, they spotted land. They rowed ashore, but the land was flat and rocky, not good for farming. This place wouldn't be good for a settlement, but Leif had discovered North America. This was the first time Europeans reached the New World, now known as Canada, hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus. Leif and his crew continued to sail south and eventually found a land that was wooded and green. He named this place Markland, but decided to keep searching for better land. They sailed down a river to a lake with fresh water and plenty of fish. They anchored their boats, rowed ashore, and set up camp. One day they hiked further inland and found a vineyard with grapes. Leif decided to name this new land Vineland, which is now part of modern-day Canada. After exploring Vineland, Leif and his crew sailed back to Greenland to share their discovery. Not long afterward, Leif's father, Erik the Red, passed away, and Leif became the new chief. Leif never returned to Vineland, but his brother Thorvald and his sisters did. They sailed to Vineland, picked more grapes, and cut down trees to take home. They explored further down the coast, but they weren't alone. They encountered the native people who already lived there, whom they called the Skraelings. Instead of trying to make friends, Thorvald and the other Vikings attacked them. The Skraelings fought back, and Thorvald was killed by an arrow. The Vikings stayed in Vineland for 2 more seasons and buried Thorvald there, but eventually returned to Greenland. Later, Thorvald's brother Thorstein and their sister Freydis returned to Vineland with 130 Vikings. They tried to settle the land, but the Native American people outnumbered them and did not want them there. They often attacked the Vikings, who knew they were outnumbered and that staying would be too dangerous. Later, Vikings would occasionally return to Vineland to cut down trees, but they never stayed permanently. The dream of a Viking settlement in North America had ended. Leif Erikson went down in history as the first explorer to reach the New World, 400 years before Christopher Columbus. In the United States, October 9th is officially Leif Erikson Day. Today, many people across the world trace their roots back to Scandinavia, the land of the Vikings. Many of these descendants now live in the American Midwest. You may have even heard of the Minnesota Vikings football team, named after their ancestors. Wow, what an incredible journey through the world of the Vikings. We've learned about their homes, their gods, their voyages, and their encounters with new lands. Now it's your turn to continue the adventure. Here's your quest. Research. Dive deeper into Viking history, explore their mythology, their art, and their daily lives. Create. Design your own Viking longship or write a story about a Viking adventure. Share. Tell your friends and family what you've learned about the Vikings. Let's keep the spirit of exploration alive. Who knows what amazing discoveries you'll make next? To learn more about the history of Viking and America, remember to like and subscribe.